This is KTVO's Good Morning Heartland.
Welcome back. If you spend some time outdoors, chances are you've been bothered by poison ivy. To learn more about the symptoms to look out for and how to treat it, we have Dr. Justin Puckett from Complete Family Medicine here this morning. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing well, thank you.
All right, so let's talk about poison ivy, oak, and sumac and the allergic reaction it causes and the symptoms.
Yeah, so the way that it's actually causes that reaction is it's an immune reaction. So your body sees this oil that's on the plant called urushiol that binds to our skin, and it actually penetrates through our skin. And then as it gets deeper in, our body sees that oil and says, whoa, this isn't supposed to be here, and then causes quite an immune reaction. And so that's why we get those, the rash, the blistering, the redness, the itch, all of that is a part of an allergic immune reaction.
Now, how many people are allergic to this oil?
Well, you know, it varies, and it varies on the severity, and it varies on how much oil they have to get a rash. So theoretically, nearly everyone is allergic if they were to get covered in enough of the urushiol oil. However, about 75% of the people that are out there in the woods walking through that get exposed will develop a rash. You know, there's been studies done in people who are firefighters and forestry workers, and, you know, usually in a season between a third and a half of them will develop poison ivy, and that's using all of the good precautions, long pants and those sorts of things.
All right. Now, I know that I have had allergic reaction to poison ivy once before, and I got it on my legs, and then the next day it spread. Why is that?
Well, we like to think, and sometimes wives' tale will say that you can spread it from touching one place to another. And once that oil has touched the skin and bound, it's not going anywhere. Now, if the oil gets on a place that's got thin skin, especially like in the creases of our arms, it will show up there first because the skin's not as thick and it can get in and cause the reaction quicker. However, if it's on a thick part of our body, like our legs or on our hands, or especially the palms of our hands, the soles of our feet, it might not even show itself for several days. But it's really not transferable, so you can't spread it, even from touching, or if a blister breaks or anything like that. It's not going to go anywhere. It's only if you have re-exposure to the oil itself. And so sometimes in the wintertime, we get poison ivy oil on our coat, and then we keep putting our arm through our coat, and we keep getting it, or something like that. Or maybe in the summertime, our pet brings it in, because pets aren't, none of our outside animals are allergic to it. It just binds to humans. And so whenever the dog comes in and you pet the dog and you get it, and then the dog leaves, gets more oil, comes back, you pet the dog again, it can seem as though you're spreading it, but as long as you've washed with soap and water, it's not going anywhere. Okay.
Now, what are some ways to treat it? I know that there's over-the-counter, you know, ointments and lotions. Anything else?
Yeah, there's about a zillion ways to treat it. I mean, you can ask somebody here in the Heartland, and they're going to tell you. And all of those over-the-counter common ways of treating it can be helpful. But the primary ways that we treat it is with antihistamines. So we're using medicines like Claritin or Allegra that are over-the-counter now, or even Benadryl at nighttime. And also, I encourage my patients who are having a real hard time with the itch. That itch is carried in on the nerve signals that are similar to pain. So even taking some Tylenol will actually help with the itch, or ibuprofen for that matter. And then the key thing is getting all that oil washed off so that it won't continue to spread. And then sometimes it gets severe enough, and especially if it's around your face or something like that, that it requires treatment with a steroid, because a steroid works to stop that allergic immune response so that it'll go away.
Okay. And really quickly, I know that you touched base on some of these, but we're going to do some myths versus facts, because I know a lot of people say, oh, this is what happens when you have poison ivy, when in general it doesn't happen. So the first one is scratching poison ivy blisters will spread the rash.
Yeah, we covered that a second ago, that it's really not, the oil is not in that water. And so what you need to worry about with scratching it is that you get it infected, because there's all kinds of trouble that you can have with secondary skin infections. So, but you're not going to spread the rash by scratching it.
Okay. Myth, poison ivy rash is contagious.
Yeah, I think we also covered that. So it can be from the oil can come to you several times, but you're not gonna spread it from person to person as long as you've washed off the oil using soap and water. And so my recommendation is after you've had out in the woods, and it usually takes about at least 4 hours for it to penetrate deep enough for it to bind. And so whenever I go to the woods, I do it in 4-hour increments. And I go home and take a shower and wash aggressively with a washcloth and soap and water.
Okay. And after the first time I can't get poison ivy again. Is that true?
Nope, that's definitely a myth. Some people will develop a little bit of immunity from year to year, but most people that are going to get it, it's a lifetime exposure. And some people who don't get it at all as a child will say, "Oh, I'm immune," and if they continue to expose themselves, eventually their body will develop that reaction.
And finally, dead poison ivy plants are no longer toxic. You say that's a myth.
Yeah, yep. If they're dead, that oil can live. There's actually been studies that have shown that oil to be real and to exist for decades. So anytime you're removing the poison ivy plant, whether it's dead or alive, you need to be very cautious. Also, the poison ivy here shows up as 3 primary plants. It can be a little tiny plant, it can be a shrub, and it can also be a very tall vine that goes clear to the top of a 100-foot tree. So you kind of got to be aware of all the different presentations of the poison ivy in order to avoid it. Okay, thank you so much. What we'll do is we'll post everything on our website at heartlandconnection.com, and we'll link up Dr. Puckett's information with Complete Family Medicine. Again, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll be right back.